There's Jonathan Herbst, founder and CEO of Scale Up Growth Partners. Welcome to our Stories of Scaling Up series, where I chat with owners, managing directors, founders, and business leaders of scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies. Today, I'm speaking to Geoffrey Zabell, who's co-founder of Kwala Invest. Welcome.
Thanks, Jonathan. Great to be here.
I'm going to start by spelling Kwala, Kwala. It's just in case my pronunciation is wrong. So thanks so much for joining me, Geoffrey. Listen, why don't you start by giving us an idea of what Kwala is, what it does, and how long have you been doing it?
Yeah, sure. Kwala is, I guess, it's the first ethical investing app in Australia. It's for retail investors who are seeking out ways to build financial well-being, and whether they're time poor, don't have enough money, don't know where to begin, don't have the expertise, they can come to Kwala, where our investment committee is managing a portfolio for them of impact companies around the globe. We've been doing this now for about 2.5 years since all three co-founders came together. I'm one of them and leading the product and technology part.
Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper into that. Impact companies, and did you say ethical investments? So can you just give us a bit more of an understanding of that, please?
Yeah, when we say ethical, it's quite an extensive, let's say, level of investing. And for Kwala specifically, it's around what we call the UN SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
These are extensively researched categories of impact that the United Nations has put together as ways that can improve both the livelihoods of people, the environment, and then also how communities are maintained, whether it's a city or it's rural. But there are about 17 categories in total. And rather than just saying this is a good company and it's got a vanilla, say, A, B, C, D rating, we focus on areas that the companies are investing or creating a service or good that is addressing one of those impact areas. In terms of the companies that we have, there's roughly 220 in the portfolio that any Kwala owns, and they roughly have around 3 impact areas. For example, one can be life on land is one, which I think is section 13. There's also climate action, which is an obvious one that we always hear about today. There's also infrastructure and innovation, gender equality, education, and then there's another one called, which I think is great, is the work well economic benefits.
So I'm assuming these companies could be anywhere in the globe?
Yes.
Okay. Being Australian-based, that means so you can tell I'm putting my director of the super fund hat on and the issues that we have. So I'm assuming we're investing in Australian dollars, not multi-currency. Is that right?
Yes. How we've invested in global companies, we've broken it out into 3 different exchanges. The first one being the ASX, obviously being here in Australia. And then the other 2 are in the US. It is the NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. So to answer your question directly, we have both. We hold US currency and Australian currency in order to purchase those companies.
And so you mentioned it's for any size investor. Did I catch that right?
You did, and that's been really one of the biggest milestones for us over the last 2 years, is not designing this for ourselves, but rather designing it for all Australians. And one of those a big driver for us is looking at problems rather than opportunities first.
Yep.
And what I said earlier to you about I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough money, or there's not enough knowledge. There's so much knowledge out there for me to obtain, and I don't know what to trust. All of those factors have been designed into what you see now in the Kwala app. And it allows any adult Australian, at least for now, to start with $10.
Wow. That's fabulous.
Okay. we think so too.
Okay. And so really your core customer is anybody that wants to invest ethically and into organisations that are making, as you say, an impact, making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because the market is growing and the interest, and we know that there's around 2 million micro investors now in Australia. That's grown considerably during the pandemic. And part of where we see this is you are seeing a shift away from what was traditionally looking at property, which is definitely let's say, the bread and butter of the Australian economy. And they're looking at different areas. And the first layer of that is then looking at investing, micro investors, and then to go one step further and look at ethical investing as an option. A lot of people have not realized this was even possible. I can say I've been doing it myself for years. That's because I come from a financial background. And we don't expect anyone to be sitting there nervously trying to decide, do I pick company X or do I pick company Y? Rather, we would do that for you and bring that team of expertise together to say, no, look at this portfolio, learn from these companies, and we look to improve that product service in the future.
Thank you. Congratulations. I think it's a phenomenal concept. So, you just mentioned the pandemic and how investors are changing. So you launched in the pandemic or just prior to the pandemic?
I guess if the pandemic is over, when is the official date that the pandemic has ended? Are we out of the...
Well, let's assume that, it's becoming, we're working with it now. So, but if you...
I was just teasing, but we launched post pandemic, but in terms of the inception of the co-founders coming together and working on Kwala, that started during the pandemic and has continued all the way till when we launched, which was September 26th of this year.
Wow. So let's talk about that. So, you've launched, you're developing in a pandemic. What actions did you take during the pandemic that have stuck with you and stuck with business going forward?
Yeah, actually, this is a good question for us, especially because we are a rural team or regional or country team. The three co-founders, Peter, Patrice, and myself, all from different places. I was actually in Madrid doing my MBA, but actually spent the lion's share of my time in New York. Peter was based between Sydney and Gundy, or what we call Wanneroo country, near Scone, and so is Patrice. And the idea that we came up with this was from research, and sharing that research was during the serious, I think it was March 2020, when we were all in serious lockdown. Me coming home, at least to Australia, and setting up shop here, but we were still all remote. So from day one, we had to start working in a different format, especially for Peter and Patrice. We kind of unveiled the agile framework of working that I'd experienced for many years in the States, and then applying that with our team while we were remote. And when you start looking at it, you have to look at your tools, because it's collaboration. You don't have a Zoom meeting is still a Zoom meeting. It's not an in-person meeting. And then they have different applications and pros and cons. And I think what we then set in place is actually having less meetings and more workshops. And literally we would, like at the end of a quarter, we would then have a road trip, come to meet for several days and build that agenda over whether it was weeks or months, and then make it a much more impactful engagement together.
Makes sense. I mean, that's why the way I coach and mentor, we work on the agile 13-week sprints, and then bring the client with his or her leadership team, or for that matter, multiple clients together once a quarter to actually do their planning for their next sprint. Makes total sense. And are you still doing that?
Absolutely. We have no interest of changing that out, because I think the wisdom with this is trying to avoid answering things too quickly. We see this where we try and rush decisions, and it's like, no, go away, everyone think, and bring your perspective on this problem or opportunity or solution, and see what the difference is when you are, off on your own and individualized thinking, and then bringing it back to the team.
Yep. Excellent. So what's the future? So it's a recent launch. What's the future look like, and what do you see as your main challenges going forward?
Yeah, I think when you're a new product, especially in the service space, and it is B2C, I can break this out into 3 brief or high-level areas. The first one would be is customer-centric, and it's to do with messaging. What we've discussed now, it might seem very straightforward, but when you are dealing with a new product or service, it still takes a while for people to really understand what the mission is, the vision, and how it works. And in any of those like points of anxiety or not understanding how it works, those are sort of the cues that we have to take. And we learn that, we are literally drinking from the fire hose of all of our early customers giving us their insights and hearing those things through the customer experience, which is ultimately support. In terms of the product, it's really about while we grow, it has to be sustainable. And part of that is also really emphasizing on not just getting new customers, but maintaining customer love every step of the way as we grow. I'll give you an example. Rewind before the pandemic, the startup world was very much accustomed to this sort of hockey stick-like growth. And a lot of that is focused on new customers. And then we actually forget, and it even translates down into, operating expenses or budgets where customer support is honed in on and focused. And for us at Kwala, we're dealing with well-being, we're dealing with their future, and you cannot discount those pain points of our customers at any point. So we're very much being aware of that, because I think the pandemic has changed not only how we have offered this product, but also the anxieties that we didn't see before the pandemic are definitely there with our early customers. Let's say that the large audience of Australia. And then I think the last one here is one of the leaders is, I'm going to give you it's more of a trinity, is talent, diversity, and purpose. Just like we have a customer experience, we are building out our employee experience. What does it feel like to work at Kwala, not just being a customer at Kwala? How should the team engage? Retrospectively, what have we learnt as the inaugural team and how we work in a squad? Can that be improved, or should it change slightly? That I think is going to be one of the toughest things going forward, because it's not just your skill set. You want to see like how they think differently, and diversity is so hard, but so important. You can't just put it aside.
There's some really, really good points in the Geoffrey. One thing I would say, bringing your team and scaling a fast-growing team, rituals become really important. And rituals of, the cultural rituals of the organisation. You mentioned purpose as almost as a foundation, which I absolutely agree with. Fascinating. People can find it on the website, but I wrote a blog some time ago about some research was done that companies with a strong purpose and the strong beliefs with the team, the staff believing that purpose, statistically generate 400% more return than companies without a purpose. But purpose, throw the rituals on, which is meeting rhythms, how often, type, etc. As you said, coming together quarterly, things like quarterly themes to take the team along for the ride. I vividly remember a fellow I met in Ethiopia. We have 2 adopted Ethiopian children, and at the time we met, they were adopting as well, and he eventually moved to Australia. And I remember having a barbecue with him and the family, and he was wearing an Atlassian t-shirt, and blazoned across the front was "Ship It," SHIPIT. So they were bringing out a new product launch, and that quarter the theme for the entire company was "Ship It," and it was blazoned everywhere. Bringing the team along and empowering the team to work together was for this one particular key execution element for that quarter. That was one of the ways they did it. It was fascinating to watch.
It's clever. And it just shows you can forget. You can just forget. You got so much going on, and then even your team can just forget why are we building this. And if it's as simple as a T-shirt with 2 or 3 words,
absolutely. And another client, arguably the largest functional food business in Australia, as in food that you can get ready packed, high protein food. When I started with him, I said to the founder, how long have you been going? And he said, 8 years. Or the founder's 2 brothers, 8 years. I said, and one of the founders said to me, we actually, it was last month was 8 years since we delivered the first shipment. And and he went on to tell me that he delivered it himself in his car. And this company is now, they've just raised $125 million in venture capital. And I said, what did you do to celebrate? And this blank look, what? They've got 100, I think they had 250 staff. I said, did you do anything to celebrate? No. It's those things that, build the culture. So, I dragged the EA in and, we planned because 24/7, 3 shifts. In the middle of COVID, we had the white-collar workers turn up at a factory with cupcakes with the number 8 on and, did 3 celebrations and thanked the staff. And the morale we tracked it, the morale went through the roof. It was really, really, a lot of really simple things, but saying thank you and celebrations are absolutely critical. Have you had a celebration of the launch?
It's funny you say that. We almost forgot. We had this, all this build up, and I remember it was just after the AFL Grand Final, so it was the Monday. For PR reasons, you want to always get that at the start of the week, and then it can build up and add into people's calendars, and they want to talk to you. And I remember there was just so much pressure on that weekend. And then just the fact that the next day when it did launch at 5 a.m. and sat there and watched the button get pressed. And then that whole day we just sort of had this calm. And so for us, that it was quite refreshing that we were expecting something completely, or at least we were prepared for something very different. And then we all sort of had, because we were still remote at least for the launch day, and went, is there any issues over here? No, I think You're all good? Okay, yep, good. So we'll just keep pushing on with these things that are due in 2 weeks' time. And then it was only, I think, at the end of the week, because then Patrice, Peter, and then a few other of the team members came in to Sydney, and we finally had a cheers, and it was just a chat about what did we learn, what were the biggest struggles for the individuals, and then, okay, what do we envision? What does the future look like? And this was all very casual, like no whiteboards, anything like that. We're like, no, we just need to stop for a second.
Yeah, it's interesting. Keep that one in mind. End of the first quarter or something. So what do you think has been the biggest learning you've had since you've become a business owner?
Yeah, this one has, I spent a bit of time thinking about this one, and the mantra that has been tried and true, especially because we have been remote from day one, is words are never enough. If you want to get that idea validated, push it through, I think more than ever before with starting a company day one remote, is that you have to lead with visuals to support that idea, the problem, or the opportunity. I think the great thing about this hybrid work style that we see is that a conversation now has the ability to it has many layers. It's not just you're speaking or you have a visual, and you can have collaboration at your fingertips. Everyone has their own whiteboard, to share their screen, as opposed to just one person controlling the narrative. And I think through those new tools, like some of them didn't even exist before the pandemic, and have just, in terms of the integration and looking, I mean, I'm sure there are many people out there that are using Slack and seeing like just the use of the huddle and the crayon to optimize, and it's just that one little bit of innovation that can allow ideas to be, nurtured, thought out, broken down, and then repackaged all within a video. And so I think even for doing this interview with you, it's sort of, I feel a little bit empty-handed that I don't have visuals to support my words, because I'm so accustomed to it. But yeah, it's definitely knowing now that a conversation can be far more dynamic and have these layers of collaboration involved.
Yeah, and that leads to a really interesting trend theme, the whole concept of hybrid work. And I was listening to the head of Business Sydney the other day, and his job is to push Sydney, the brand, and the CBD, and he and the Lord Mayor are trying to push businesses to bring their staff back full time, 5 days a week forever. And my clients and I talk often about what the hybrid model actually looks like, and there's no doubt that getting a team together, certainly in my opinion, for 2 days a week, if you can, face-to-face, adds so much to the power of collaboration and brainstorming. Just coming together with my leadership teams, client leadership teams, like putting post-it notes on a wall. I know we've got Miro and all of those tools we can do it collaboratively, but it's very, very powerful. No, not everybody can do that. But I don't know about your thoughts. I can't see, certainly in the industries we're in, people in the office 5 days a week, unless they choose to, really being the norm going forward. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think firstly, it's exciting to see that people in the mass there's been a bit of elasticity in their thinking, because a lot of people would think this would never could be done.
Yeah.
And, all it takes is a force majeure event for everyone to go, oh, wow, well, we can do it if we really put our minds to it.
Yep.
And then part of that exploration is looking at, we're in this hype mode, and then I think it will start to converge onto or consolidate into like sort of this norm.
Yep.
I think the research I've been seeing, the heat map is around that 2 days a week is ideal.
Yep.
I can say for us, our cadence on average, we'd be doing 1.5 to 1 days a week in person. And that's purely just not because we wouldn't do more. It's to do with geography.
Yep.
We're 300 kilometers apart, the 3 team members. And then to go even further, we have people around the world that we're talking with. So we see it as just making sure when those meetings are happening that you are building an agenda over the week. And then before that meeting happens, at least we can start to do prioritization. And same way we would do it with our software delivery or deployments is, what's a P0, what's a P1, what's a P2, what's a P3, and then get those votes. And then that at least gets us into a good setting of, what needs to be addressed this week. And if we can't get anything done, we can push it into the next.
Yeah, and look, another really good point, the waste of time we used to have in meetings, and in fact still do on Zoom. Having a strong agenda that's been agreed in advance with the priorities makes everybody so much more productive. And certainly with my clients using the hybrid model, the planning for the bringing together for the 2 days, whatever it might be, the week they're coming together, they're actually planning in advance a hell of a lot more, which is making them more productive.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, it's been fascinating to watch. Hey, listen, when you think of the word successful, who jumps to mind and why?
Oh, yeah, this is a good one. I'm going to keep it brutally honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's my parents. Reasons for that, it has been a driver for me for many years, because I think they've set such a great standard. And the why, they work hard, but more importantly, they really enjoy their craft. And what they've achieved both as individuals and then to combine that together, I think it's fantastic to see that. So I think that from a very young age, just going, hang on, you need to pick what you enjoy doing, because then you will naturally work hard. And I can say that about Kwala. Like, there are just times I completely forget the track of time because we're so involved in what we're doing and trying to create something new. And then the final thing there to add is, and this, because I'm a millennial and they're baby boomers, is this word balance. I don't know what it's been like for you, but I think the work-life balance term really only came onto my radar, I think, during my New York days around 2013, 2014. And now it's becoming, I think, even more mainstream, not just in the States, but globally. It's all these things are coming out about mental well-being, burnout, corporate depression. It's just proliferating from this one thing of who can actually achieve balance. And I can say, with being very grateful and fortunate to seeing that they achieved that, before all this came into focus.
I mean, they're quite unusual on that basis. I'm at the lower end of. I think I'm the last year of the baby boomers, or the first year of whatever came after. So I'm 62. And one of the things, it's really interesting. A couple of points you brought up there. One is what I call unique ability. Doing what you're passionate at and what you're really good at, and then delegating the rest to people who have unique abilities that are different to you, who can actually do those things. Like in my business, The things that in my unique abilities is building frameworks and very simple tools to help entrepreneurs and CEOs and leadership teams grow, scale their businesses. And then mentoring, coaching, advising, holding them accountable to do that. And then this, and this has come to me from, I'm not sure if I mentioned to you, my 8-year-old son. We were in Fiji in July, and he just said to me, "Dad, why are you listening to these things for hours at a time? 2-hour, 1-hour podcast, 2-hour podcast." And it's as part of my Grow Remarkable, spread the word. It suddenly struck me. We don't get short podcasts with real entrepreneurs, real CEOs who are growing companies and don't learn from them. And it was like, and this, what I'm doing now is the one thing that I will never delegate in my business, because I love it. I love the conversations I'm having with you and with the other people I'm talking about. So it's passionate. The other thing is the you mentioned about work-life balance. One of the lesson for everybody. One of the key lessons I've had is most founders, CEOs, managing directors have zero work-life balance. They think and work-life balance is described as family and work. I actually think there's 3 elements: it's family, work, and yourself. If you don't take time out to rejuvenate yourself and recover yourself, you're going to be crap in the other 2 parts of your business, being the family and work. And it's not something even today I'm not good at. I mean, one of the key things I do is actually schedule free time, schedule time out to recover and to make memories with my family. And it sounds as though that's what your parents did.
Yeah, I think the physical aspect of their lives, it's just so important. And we forget how much you need to step away. I do a lot of trail running and surfing and sort of what we call cross-country tour skiing. Mm-hmm. And I've even met several people that I knew, from my Comcast Walmart days. One of them was an SVP there, and he was actually in a vice where he said, "Look, the only way I can actually achieve my balance is by literally signing up for one of these runs or adventure events and then having some sort of charitable mission behind it." And then that created this barrier of goodwill. Mm. And so, he was telling up about 20 of these a year. Just to, not, obviously the goodwill was there, but really the goodwill was to protect himself. Yep. So that he could achieve, even if it was the smallest or the most modest form of balance, at least he got him straight into that. All right, no, signing off, got to get here. But yeah, I think it's a very important part of, when you're stepping away from a meeting or your laptop or your phone, that contemplation is so important. And if you're on a run or if you're swimming, I've moved to Sydney. It's so good to have incredible water available in a city like this. And just that, even those events are just important. We discount these things. And even a walk. Yeah.
And I think your generation is far better at it than my generation. I'm lucky that when I think I mentioned I've got 2 8-year-olds, and they well and truly keep me balanced. It's a real plus for me. Mm. So listen,
I was going to say there's what do they say? Science progresses with every funeral. So, there's a reason. It's not that the baby boomers are culturally not able to change. It's just the research was not there.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think that's right. So are you a reader? Podcasts, any business books, podcasts, business autobiographies you'd recommend?
Yeah, in terms of the books, I've got got two there business-wise, which I think were fantastic, and I got to read them during my MBA. I think the first one is Innovate by Alexandre Casaro.
Yeah.
Essentially taking all the assets and the thinking of Silicon Valley and realizing that you don't have to be in that city, even though I was there once upon a time, that you don't have to be in that city in order to create innovation.
Yep.
And then that innovation bit is a good segue into the second book, because I'm dealing with product, every single day, whether it's to do with the call to action on an email or a change in the security measures on our onboarding flow. But the book that I think has inspired me, and I got to see him speak some years ago in New York, is Tony Fadell. So his latest book is Build. He's being the co-designer of the iPod.
Yep.
And then went on to create Nest, and his tenacity towards design. Don't design for discounts. Don't design for handouts. And innovation can come in so many different levels. It could be a design innovation on the interface. It could be a cost innovation. It can be an operational innovation. Never just think it's some like ether word. It's just really about how do you translate all of these design aspects into innovating, and then knowing exactly who is the recipient of that innovation.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. One of the things I talk about when I'm introducing concepts to my clients. Steve Jobs' EA, I think she wrote a book. I haven't seen it. I haven't found it, but she said that the only time she could ever guarantee to find Steve Jobs was at a and this is about rituals again. He used to have a marketing strategy meeting with Johnny Ives, who was the design director at Apple, at 12:30 every Wednesday until 4:30, and it was the only time she could guarantee she could find Steve Jobs. And the level of detail they went into in design and innovation, and the story I heard, which I think is phenomenal, was they spent like an extraordinary amount of time. If you think about when you buy, and most of the phone companies have done this now as well, when you buy an iPhone or buy an iPad, an iPhone particularly, when you take the top off the iPhone for the first time, the top of the box, there's like this, almost like a sucking sound. And it's something that's has stuck with me, but the amount of time they spent, getting that, that sound and that feeling as they open the box, which is yeah, exactly right. And innovation at the most, but in absolute, microcosm of detail as well. Sorry, I'll catch you off there. I think you're going to talk about some podcasts.
And to add, if you cut into the box,
mm-hmm.
there's an iPhone cover hidden.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's, even though they don't, it is designed in there, but it is hidden.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's, I know it's blowing up on TikTok at the moment.
Right.
But yeah, it shows they, why design a phone without a phone cover? Like, why hasn't Apple, tackled that? No, they actually have. They just see how, who is willing to deconstruct the entire package. Like, wow. Is that a different archetype of personal customer?
Okay, I'll have to look at that next time I buy one.
Yeah. The other things I think that have been worthy to me in terms of literature, a fiction I think everyone should read. It has a lot of, practicality in your day-to-day, is The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Not easy to even go down the rabbit hole of the people who onboarded that objectivism movement. I think just that alone, speaking about craft and not getting distracted, especially, I guess the baby boomers, the one thing I think they definitely beat us at is undivided attention and focus. Whether we're at the mercy of, distraction, service economy, but really finding people that are focused now on one thing is I think that's the first, bell that goes off and says, all right, this person is dedicated to that cause or that mission.
Yep.
And then when I love listening to podcasts when I'm driving. I actually am one of those people that wants to listen to the podcast. It's not a passive thing. So I probably listen to less podcasts, but I actually remembered it if you had to test me. And I think the one that has definitely taken me, it's captured a lot that I did not know about him, and whether you want to acknowledge it or not, as the most powerful man in the world is Xi Jinping and the Economist series. I think it's seven-part series called The Prince.
Okay.
And if you look at his story, the history of his family, and all of the sequence of events that you could not even imagine. We have to deal with the future. We're an investment service, and dealing with the future it's become more sporadic, randomized than ever before, through all these areas of opportunity. I think we have about 18 different markers, and then you can take that also, and you look at all these things that happened to get Xi to where he is today. I think it's just an incredible story.
Well, I'll definitely look at that, because trying to understand where they're going it's a very interesting thought process right now, and how that will affect us over the next 5, 10, well, for the Chinese outlook, 50 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question. Any last piece of advice or parting words? For an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur.
Yes. This one, and it's coming through, doing an MBA in the pandemic, starting a company during the pandemic. And I think also when you are, one of the things you have to get your head around is being in solitude and knowing that things are moving ahead, even though you're not surrounded by people. Is allow slow thinking, facilitate it at any point in your process with your different teams.
Flow or flow?
Slow thinking.
Okay.
Just like with your friend in Ethiopia, just having that mantra, putting decisions in front of people, and we forget how much time we actually have in the day to make decisions.
Yeah.
And more importantly, that you do not have to make a decision on that item today. I think it's been a very important part of our culture, being remote, is on those meetings you get excited and then you feel like you have to make that decision right then and there. But rather we always say just wait 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours to allow divergent thinking. And if you have taken diversity seriously in your firm, that comes through by, I would say, anecdotally, a factor of 8 of the different ideas that you can bring to the table. And all it took was one day of going off and contemplating.
Right. Nice. So Geoffrey, where can people find, where can they find Kwala?
Yes, we are currently on the Australian Apple App Store.
Yep.
And we are working diligently towards getting Android ready before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is mobile only. And so we have our website, which is kwala.la. And then from there, you can get on. There's a simple button just to get through to the App Store. And everything happens in that app for you to check any progress and set up any of your recurring investments, however you see fit.
Fabulous. Geoffrey, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Jonathan. Great to be here, and thank you for having us.
No, and there were some fabulous insights in there. Thank you very much for taking time and sharing.
No worries. Thank you.
Great. Cheers.